In this video, I will sculpt the same thing in 10 minutes, in 1 hour, and in 100 hours. Okay, maybe not that much, in 10 hours, okay? To see how much different these three are, and to challenge myself to, I guess, speed sculpt. And thank you to GarageFarm for sponsoring this video. More on how they help me and can help you save time and meet your deadlines with their super intuitive rendering service later. As you can see right now, this is the 10-minute sculpt. I have actually done a year full of speed sculpts before. I've never done a sculpt that fast, so it was interesting to see what I can do in 10 minutes. The main thing that I focused on here was just in general the things that make him unique. The long nose, maybe even like the face shape. The way that I like to work is by creating the rough thing first and then I guess refining it more and more and more. So the first goal is always for me to get it to a state where you can sort of see all the aspects, and then by refining the aspects I can get it closer to the, character that it's supposed to be or the thing that it's supposed to be. I gotta be honest, I think this looks pretty good actually. I can see some things that I probably would have, done better. Here it is very important to fully focus on the basic shapes that we need here, like the face, the big nose, of course. Just trying to overall sort of capture the shape rather than going into the details. This looks okay for 10 minutes. Let's get into the next one. With 1 hour, we're finally getting to the spot where I am comfortable sculpting a head. The first anchor point are the eyes, and then I work off of that, creating the rest of the head. But I also wanted to kind of challenge myself a little bit, so I'm not only going to include the head and the neck like creating a bust, I'm going to include a little bit more. I wanted to include the body as well because I wanted to challenge myself a little bit. I actually thought about adding like a pose to it as well, but that would be way too much because I wanted to just, add a little bit more than what I did in the 10-minute sculpt, which is also going to be the same for the next part, the 10-hour sculpt. I, of course, all have references of what he is supposed to look like, but I also wanted to kind of bring in my own style a little bit. And people oftentimes also ask me what resolution I like to sculpt in. I like to use dynamic topology oftentimes, and for that I usually use 20 resolution for the beginning. You can do quite a lot with only 20 resolution, and don't need to have that much more resolution to get to a pretty okay looking sculpt, I would say. I think it gets there a little bit. It still looks way different, especially the body. I haven't really done everything that I wanted, and at least the face looks much better than the 10-minute sculpt. I think it goes in the right direction. But now, of course, we come to the full realization, I guess, of Ganondorf in the 10-hour sculpt. I think the biggest difference between the 1 hour sculpt and the 10-hour sculpt is not necessarily going to be the sculpt end result necessarily, but more the, I guess, mindset that I was able to get into each one of these. For the 1 hour sculpt, it is still kind of a short time to create a character. So I really didn't have as much time to think about each individual aspect of the sculpt, and I can actually think ahead rather than just kind of working off of what I've already created. Of course, as always, the beginning doesn't change, so I'm still sculpting the same character, which means sculpting the same head. So that's also why I could achieve more in the same amount of time in the 10-hour version than in the 1 hour version, just because I already thought about how I want to construct the face, at least most of it, in the 1 hour sculpt. So I didn't have to think about it that much more. And I could actually go into the details that much more. By the way, this Ganondorf version is actually not the one that you see in the game. This version of Ganondorf actually comes from the trailer, but not from the trailer itself. There's a small snippet where you can see Ganondorf lying there, dried up, I guess you could say. This version of Ganondorf came to be because people have reimagined what he would look like if he wasn't all that dried up. So maybe this version of Ganondorf will never see the light of day, but you know, it has now because of the sculpt and of course all the memes that have come with it or from it, where I have the inspiration from. I thought it's such a cool design that I just wanted to create it myself. Once the pose is done, it is time to fix the muscles, because muscles move and change when you do different poses. Who would have thought? Which also means that we need to adjust and maybe show more muscles than we've seen before. So for example, like fixing the shoulder, fixing the biceps, fixing stuff that would flex and fixing stuff that would relax, I guess. And that is where we get to one of the more complex things to do in sculpt mode, which is sculpting hair. What I did here was I separated the hair from the body just because it's easier then to go in between the two objects. If you don't want to waste hours and hours and hours on sculpting hair, you can really only sculpt like stylized hair, because otherwise putting these individual strands and like intersections and like holes in between like different strands can take ages, which of course I do not have. So I only really sculpted it so that it kind of looks stylized. To render the final shots, I've actually used the cloud rendering service from GarageFarm. Once you log in on their website as a new user, you get $50 of free rendering credits. To connect to your 3D program, in my case Blender, you just download and install the desktop app. In there, go to plugins, install the plugin for whatever 3D program you're using. They support all major 3D apps on the market. And now you have this new render beamer button right in your program. I beamed up Ganondorf as a still render, which uploads the file to their servers. And after the upload is finished, you can go back to the web page to check all the render settings. Most of them get copied over from the file you've uploaded. If you have multiple cameras in your scene, you can render them all at once in here, which is what I have done. A short time after confirming your settings, all the jobs show up in this list, and once they're done rendering, you get a quick notification. You can download the images yourself or determine a folder where they get saved automatically once they're done. Both the installation as well as the rendering process were surprisingly easy, and I had no problems at any time really. But even if you run into any problems, they have a 24/7 support team that can help you out. If you use Blender, you actually get a 33% discount on your renders. So for my 10 shots, it only cost me 89 cents. Of course, the price can vary, but to hit an important deadline or just to be able to use your PC for other stuff while rendering, I think that's pretty affordable. And if a discount wasn't enough, they also recently joined the Blender Development Fund to support the Blender Foundation and the development of the best 3D program out there, in my opinion. If you want to check out GarageFarm yourself, click the link in the description and start rendering. The version that you just saw, I spent a little bit more time creating the materials, refining the lighting, and creating like a cooler environment. This is actually what I finished in 10 hours, so it's not like it doesn't have perfect lighting, it doesn't have like the super detailed materials, but I think I'm still very happy with how this turned out. Comparing that to the previous versions, here's the 10-minute version. Look at the definition differences. As you can see, the essence is still there, but of course there wasn't enough time to create the refined version. I think I'm still happy, but of course comparing it to this, you can see a huge difference.